Peace. I see that I am live. I think in three locations, hopefully Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Peace to you. Let's see. Looks like a little bit of a I give this a couple of adjustments. Listening to myself. Welcome on this seventh day of May. Mm. Today, I'm going to talk about leadership. And I so respect those who say things like, I'm not a role model. People who say, I'm not a role model, or people say, don't follow me. I get it. I've said these things as well. That's not realistic. All right. So, people, people operate in villages and communities. We operate in villages and communities. We can see this in nature. Okay. And so, yes, you try to be an island all unto yourself. So that you're unconnected with anyone or disconnected from others. But how long does that last? How long does that last? It doesn't last. It's not reasonable. That's not how you're in the world. That's not how you're going back to the dust. Even if, let's say, you were to pass away alone, you don't get back to the dust like yourself. It's not how you live here. It's not how you go out, and it's not a healthy way to live life. So, peace. And thank you for taking a little bit of time to listen to me. I want to give a shout out to Tyrese who put a message on his Instagram he was going through. So I just want him to that there's warm, loving energy being sent his way. Whatever we go through, it's either going to make us stronger or will allow it to tear us down. So you decide. You decide. Sometimes the things we go through in life, not because we particularly hmm, it's not always for ourselves. Sometimes we go through things on so that we can grow and we can enrich others. It's important to always remember that. Try to create that conversation where you're asking yourself, why am I going through this? Don't get caught up in a trap of where you're feeling sorry for yourself. You know, if you want to do something, there's something that you want to learn from it. It's some way you want to grow and develop. It's like gold being tried in the fire. If the gold doesn't go through the fire, it's not going to be purified, right? You know that. Let's say you have a gold necklace and a certain weight, and then you have like a piece of finished gold, right? So the gold necklace that is polished to the T, no imperfections in it can be seen. That same weight of gold is going to be worth way more than the uncrafted, unpolished gold hasn't been tried in the fire, hasn't been refined. And so sometimes when we allow ourselves to be isolated, we just study, allow ourselves to be caught in our own little idea of what learning and growth is, then we're not challenged. Right? 'Cause we have to be in relationship to be challenged because we're always happy with ourselves, right? Well, not always, but many people are happy with themselves alone, judging themselves by their own rule, vetting themselves by their own perception of what correct and righteous is, or judging their own selves by their idea of wrong is or failure. So we want to avoid these type of things. We want to make sure that we're in community. And when we look at sociology, the patterns of communities, there are leaders in communities, right? And the first example of that is in the, like the minimally viable units. I'll use that kinship unit of the man, the woman, the child. That's going to be the first example of that. So with that leadership, um, like in a world perfect, you have the man, the woman, and the child. If it's the first child, it'll see the man and the woman interact, and they'll be leaders for their household. And the child will be learning. Uh, they'll be learning how to walk. They'll be learning how to talk. They'll be learning how to process various things in life. They'll be learning what good food is. They'll be learning what is appropriate and inappropriate. And some of that will be specific to their particular situation, and some of it will be generalizable, right? They'll learn social skills they can take elsewhere. Sometimes people don't get everything that they need in their, I call it a mother, right? So if we're not receiving everything we need from our mothering group, then it's our responsibility to go and get that somewhere else. If you need it as a child, that's okay. You must seek after it. You must seek knowledge, understanding, and wisdom in your adult years. It's okay. We can all, and it's those who get to be a certain age, get to be a certain amount of letters on their name, when they think they've reached this perfection. Mhm. You're missing out. You're missing out. And even if it is learning more about someone else, so that you be more effective at helping other people, right? It's not all about you. So I want to talk about leadership. Notice that some people have this idea that they are leaders and other people need to get with them on what they say. So I just want to talk about the various uh, cultures that have a healthy idea about what leadership is. So this is documented, right? I'm going to use an example of quote unquote African leadership styles. Now, the values of that kind of model, what you would see in a natural kinship situation, right? So the way leaders are picked in the, and I'll say African, the word Africa means divided land. So from that perspective, because the world was all one big massive, right? I mean, you can see Africa splitting now further. The land used to be called a Kebilon, right? That's why some of the DNA patterns of the indigenous people in Africa are similar to the DNA patterns of the indigenous people in the Americas. Culturally, we might not be all that much alike, but DNA, it might be a lot alike. And part of that is because of the splitting of the cocoa pigs. All right, we don't talk about that too much because some of us we spend our time being indoctrinated with ideas to keep us separate rather than tell us the truth about our history. And so that time is over that we're going to navigate through life like that. All right, so I come to you the 7th day of May 2024. I am coming to you with this knowing that as a people, I'm indigenous to this land known as United States of America, uh, what have you, that needs to come together to address basic issues, whether they physical safety, financial safety, emotional safety. Right? I'm here near like Maryland, and so I'm going to be cut off talking about the things that are oppressing our people. Um, and one of them, in my observation, is the access to correct information. Study of knowledge, right? So talking about knowledge, talking about understanding, talking about then wisdom and how to apply that. Today is going to be about leadership. Now, when you're dealing with large systems and communities, you're going to need to have leaders in various aspects of life, right? Let's just say, at the end of the day, we all need to learn how to self-govern. So, part of self-governing Here we go. Yeah. So technically, government is about protecting you, making sure you have the services you cannot provide for yourself. And it's part of our right here on our land to have adequate uh, opportunity to contribute to the world as far as like employment or maybe even entrepreneurship for those who have gained the skills to be contributing entrepreneurs, not just takers, but exchangers of value for value, right? So I give you some information you need or give you a process or a path, and you compensate me in some type of way, or I receive compensation for it. It might not come directly from you, it might come from a resource that you have that I know how to access. A lot of times that's what happens. All right, we can get into that. But when it comes to leadership, I want to focus in on culture and cultural competence. And culture is this culture, the definition of culture. I can give you some examples, but first, let me give you a definition of culture. Culture is how we communicate with each other. So, let's say, your kin, your village, your family, maybe they yelled across the house when they want to talk to each other. That's just how y'all are. It's loud. It's loud in there. It's rah rah. It might be fun. It might not be fun. That's part of the culture of your home. You might have a certain walk. You might have certain customs. Do you sit? Do you eat with your hands? Do you eat with chopsticks? Do you eat with a fork and spoon, knife, like that? Some of it's culture. Even little nuances. People who eat with a fork, spoon, and knife. Some cultures, it's acceptable to switch your fork from your left hand to your right hand when you cut the food. In another culture, that's considered a little bit lazy. You just like don't switch back and forth. It's awkward, right? So I am one who knows not to judge people based on what how you see them because some of it might be cultural. That's maybe how they were learned. And then the way we move and travel in this society today, sometimes there's a mismatch between how someone presents in behavior and what they were taught culturally. So in order though to keep some of the good things good about being right here at the United States of America, I'm a rock to marry, however we call it. I'm going to share this thing about culture because it's important. A lot of people don't recognize they come to America because they want to benefit from the culture. Then sometimes they bring their own culture and they make it part of popular culture. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. Good means well functioning. All right. So if I go somewhere for a service and the customer service is poor and you're looking at me like I'm a guest on my own land, that's not good. Mhm. So we want to have leaders who are aware of this dynamic and who can respond to it. We want to have leaders who are well studied in strategic management. We want to have leaders who are able to measure their own success, right? So part of how I'm talking to you today is talking to you about nation building. It's talking. I'm talking about financial stability. I'm talking about making a shift in this time that we're in because there's systems that have expired. They're obsolete, and now we're moving into something else. All right. So um, culture is your language. It could be how you walk. It could be how you talk. It's all these things together that give a community a flavor and an identity. It's bloodline lineage as well. All right. Now, know that, let's say here in North America, the original indigenous people, mostly copper tone. If you look in the history books, that's what that it says, right? So a lot of us are already here, but some of us have straight hair, some of us have a little bit kinky hair, um, different phenotypes, right? And then amongst the different tribes, some had different dress than others. How you clothe yourselves and emblems and fringes and lengths of skirts and this type of thing. It varies. That's part of your culture. And it's also influenced by your environment, right? So if you have a people that are used to being in hot weather, they're going to have less clothes on than people who are going to be in cold weather. So when we observe people how they get along, let's monitor how we are so quick to judge. I know in some circles everything's so conservative, cover every little piece of your skin except for your eyes, right? Well, that's fine, but to impose that on someone else, you have to know that some people are not overly sexualized where they get turned on by looking at somebody's elbow. That's the kind of culture we have, sometimes too, right? People they measure other folks by their own standard that is rigid and limited and separating. It separates us, and what we need now is unity, right? So I want to just acknowledge. I want to acknowledge the Moorish American and Congress of People. They have a federal constitution that is more in line with us. I like Light to Jerry Bay's channel. If you click on the documents, you'll find the constitution for that nation. And the law of the land is important. All right. As leaders, we have to recognize when various cultures bring forth something that we can all benefit from. All right. That is something we can all benefit from. A constitution for these services and how we interact. Because little do some of us know that this lack of structure is leading to dysfunction. And people around the world are waiting for us to get it together. So I just want to acknowledge that and put on the record my acceptance of the federal constitution. With the federal constitution, underneath, when I say underneath, that covers like all of United States of America, that constitution. And it is in line more so. Now, mind you, too, that is a government that is recognized at US, at the US. AA 222141. Check it out. It's a status, a citizenship status, and I recognize their federal constitution. And here at the U.S., it's like that corporate states of states to make the U.S. Jurisdiction that has some say over what happens, but each corporate state has its own rights. Okay. I eventually will talk to you about civics, but I just want to stress the importance more so of leadership. We want leaders who are competent in law. Many leaders know processes. Are they competent in law? Are they competent to know first in time, first in line, and the land? That common law is what is also what is commonly accepted. And maybe some things that had been commonly accepted aren't accepted anymore from the original indigenous peoples on the land, right? We are determined to learn how to manage our estate. And before we can talk about managing like the vast estate, we have to, for me, I want to be competent in managing my own affairs, my own estate. Okay. There's a debtor side and there is a creditor side. And both sides are sides that I manage. And so there are certain competencies along the way that I have to gain, reading, understanding, and connecting with others who are forthcoming with information and who have that same mentality and knowing that it's important for us to wake up and to be responsible, right? And so, to those students who are out there protesting, do you really have time to protest? Do you manage your own estate, or are you under the wardship tenure of a governor or something like that? So, back again to leadership, we have to choose our leaders. So, if you do not choose your leaders properly, then what good is it to go around picketing about what you like or don't like, about what the leadership did when you were the one who submitted to the jurisdiction, you submitted to the authority of that governor. My mother taught me that very early. She when talk, like looking for job situations, right? If you go to a particular job and you do not have faith and confidence in the leader, you put yourself in a bad situation because you don't want to be that one who was going against authority that you chose. All right. So if you don't like the authority, then you choose another authority to put yourself under in this system. Now, once you gain your skill set, what have you, you come under your own authority, come by your own authority, by way of the I am that is you, around you and through you, having respect for other gods and goddesses that you interact with as well, right? So today I heard a quite interesting conversation about culture and how, you know, my people don't have a culture. That's ridiculous. I have I'm speaking in English, all right? As much as it may sound different than someone else's English, because we have subcultures within cultures. So no one can steal English. It's not something that you own like that. So you can't steal my language from me. You can imitate and copy my language, and then you might take credit for some of the things that come out of my culture, some of the things that I have produced. You might take credit for it, but you haven't taken it, right? That makes you maybe an identity thief, but you cannot steal my culture from me. You can hide my culture. You can make up lies about my culture, but you can't take my culture from me. We can allow our culture to be amended, stripped. We can allow that, but someone else cannot just come take it. They could only do what we allow them to do as far as our behaviors and how we get along. And just know that amongst my people, there are so many subcultures, right? Some are influenced by religion because how we connect to whatever our gods are or whatever has a lot to do with our culture too. And so some might say, well, there is only one God and my God is the God. That is your culture. That is what you are indoctrinated into. All right. And so now is a good time to evaluate, is that the same with your grandmother's grandmother? Was that her culture? Many of us are going to benefit from going back to the culture of our ancestors, but also taking advantage of the modern amenities that we have. Like um, we want to stay in line with the principles too of our culture when it comes to our value system. See, culture is not just outward things like how we walk and how we talk and how we dress. It also has to do with our value system. So, in today's age, it seems that we have like lost our way when it comes to our values. How could that happen? Well, I'm just going to say I'm going to share with you some of the things that I have been subjected to in an attempt to take away my culture from me. I used to be a professional in a healthcare setting where every 2 years I had to acquire a certain amount of continuing education credits, right? And at the time, I didn't know my rights. I didn't know that I had the right to say it's against my cultural practices to sit through a seminar where you tell me that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy. I didn't realize it was against uh, I was leaving my rights. I didn't enforce my rights. It's my God given right to operate within my culture. But instead, I sat through the 2 hours. I didn't sit quietly. It was uncomfortable for everyone. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable for everyone when you tell me something that is directly contradictory to what I learned about development. See, if you have a baby who's born a boy, grows into adolescent, which is a stage in life, and successfully grows into adulthood, and part of the theory about a healthy development is that the adult, everything going fine, is going to increase the amount of friends, family, through connecting and having children and meeting quote unquote co-workers or entrepreneurs or whatever have you. That's like the normal development of life. Then you come and tell me that it's my responsibility to facilitate something that is anti-life, which is changing someone's physiology when their mind is not fully developed, and doing this behind the back of a mother. See, so these are like culture vulture attacks. It's a culture vulture attack because that type of practice is not in line. It's not culturally competent to that person's history and to their specific presentation. All right. And these things also go against the laws of nature, because if someone were to be the recipient, the one who's imposing these type of things on people, if they were to be the recipient of such for their family member, they would not be happy many times. So when we are putting ourselves under someone's authority, we want to recognize these patterns and traits in the person. Is this person choosing different actions and steps that are in line with preserving my culture? That is a major thing to be aware of. A major thing to be aware of. We can look at that with these church leadership as well. Church leadership. Church comes from the word Circes, goddess Circes, and circle. So when we church choose to be in certain circles, someone told me that they're a church musician, and so they notice how they could, like the Methodists walk different from the Catholics, walk different from the Adventists, walk different, from whatever denomination, how they each have their own culture, their little subculture within the culture. So the culture might be Christian culture, but within the Christian culture, the denomination had its little subtleties. And so let me just give an example of that. In many ways, they are the same, but not exactly. So, for instance, if you have a $1 bill, $5 bill, 10, 20, and so on, it's the same type of exchange or the same instrument, floating rate note instrument, but it's not the same, right? If we're supposed to now exchange $10, I cannot give you a one. I cannot give you a one and you're expecting a 10. And I'm thinking it's just the same. It's the same. I'm not going to sit up there and argue with you and tell you 10 is one and one is 10. It's not the same value. Yes, it's the same color. There's certain words on there that are the same. It's very similar, But 10 is not 1 and 1 is not 10. It's not the same. So don't demean the differences in people. All right. And of course, I could pick a more broad example. Let me give you another example of something that's not the same. An apple and an orange are not the same. An organic apple, and an organic orange are not the same. They both might be the best of whatever it is, not sprayed with a whole bunch of chemicals, or they have seeds in the middle. They both have seeds in the middle. That's what makes it a fruit, a seed bearing fruit. They're not the same. One is citrusy, tangy, more vitamins, maybe C, than an apple might have. Apple might have other attributes that are of value to you, right? An avocado is a seed bearing fruit. It's a non-sweet fruit. A tomato, a tomato is a fruit. Why? It has seeds in it, right? Are they the same? They're not the same. So these are variations within various categories. So here we go, back to this thing about quote unquote African American Black people, Moors, Aboriginal, however you like to be identified. And it is a label is part of an identity. A label is also part of cultural standards. It's not who you are. It's not who you are. And in law, people use this to say people are incompetent when they think that they are their name or they think that they are their label. We're not. Okay, we are spirit, we are body, we are soul, and we have a lineage, we have a heritage. Here at North America, we are part of the land. The ones who were born here with our bloodline lineage here, we have first rights to the land and the allonges, the contracts, all that. And we must always remember that because it also means we have a certain amount of responsibility to correct some of the things that are going on. So when we stay blinded by messages in the media, like whose fault is that? You have to agree to some of the things that are told you. But no, there are efforts to mislead you about what is true about yourself. So right now, what's in the news is this Kendrick Lamar and Drake controversy. I love it. So I love it. Right, because it's a lot of truth in that, and it's okay, like to be different, to recognize people's differences. One person is not better or like higher or lower than another because of their complexion or this that. There are certain cultures who value darker skinned people. There are certain cultures who value lighter skinned people. But so when you change someone's environment and it changes how they treat it, then you get to see that they are not their skin tone. It's a lot about how people react to them, which does not make them who they are. It contributes to their experience. A big difference. A big difference. And when we know these things, then we can better process our own experiences, things that we might have perceived as trauma, and things that even if you perceive it as trauma, you can also recognize it as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to develop, and you can use it to help somebody else. Your own experience you can use to help someone else. All right. So when we see things in the news, when we see things in media, and it's not what our grandmother's grandmother did, we can just have a little antenna up and really evaluate, is that good for my longevity? Is it good for the legacy? And I don't say it in a judgmental way, I'm just mentioning it. So I'm mentioning that when you look for a leader, look for someone who can stand on their own without taking advantage of you. Don't follow someone who can't exist without your energy. For instance, let's say someone comes to your town and they say, we build roads, right? And we want your business. You don't want to go with the one that says something like, if we don't build a road for your town, we're going to go out of business and we can't build roads ever again because we need to build the road in your town. See, you don't want leaders who are dependent on you like leeches are dependent on a host. That's not a qualified leader. And in fact, it is important that leaders will be able to reveal their income source, because there's such a thing as not receiving unjust enrichment. And if you're a leader who's receiving enrichment based on your activities, then you're not in honor. That's why we have some of the healthcare problems that we have, is because some of the quote unquote government officials who are regulating the licenses of people, they're receiving enrichment from violating them. In the freedom community, it's called SMU. Yeah, shit made up. They make up shit just to get your energy in the form of a floating rate note, just to support their position. But really, the position there is they're supposed to keep people safe so that we don't harm each other. Right. And that is one of the beautiful things about the United States of America, is that some of the regulations are there to protect us, to give surety to whatever it is that you're saying that you're going to do. I don't know if you noticed that it used to be rare that a building is just going to fall down. Why? Because you're going to get a permit. They're going to have someone who's going to make sure the engineering is right. They're going to make sure the records support what you want to do. They're going to see, like, if you have a row house and the foundation on your row house is kind of suspect, they're going to make sure you put up a retaining wall and that you don't take down your house and your neighbor's house too. Now, if we don't have these kind of processes and permits and things like that, everybody just wants to say, I'm good, I know what I'm doing. I don't have to get your permit for anything. And let's say you live in a row house and you have that mentality. What are the unintended consequences on your neighbor? Possibly. Not that you would do anything on purpose to harm your neighbor or to bring the value of your neighbor's property down. But I mean, let's be real. There is a possibility that you can miss something. There is a possibility you're not perfect. So that's why we have permits. Now, what needs to happen too here in the Americas is that we need to be a little bit more open and forthcoming about how to properly bank, because we've gotten ourselves in a situation where the debt is getting deeper and deeper, and people are complaining about housing and food and these sort of things. And I would be complaining too. However, I do have a roof over my head and I do have food. However, I'm very grateful and I recognize that these are like fragile and sensitive times. And it didn't have to be me, that I have loved ones and friends that can help kind of combat some of the challenges that are taking place here. So never judge someone else's situation when you don't know the details. You have to know that from outside looking in, you don't know everything going on in their milieu, in their situation. So it's okay to say, I don't know a thing. Outside looking in, that doesn't look good, but I don't have a detail. I don't know. You want leaders who can display those attributes. If you have a governor, a mayor, or this or that, and the crime is out of control in your community, and your mayor, your governor, whatever, if they did not go to training and school and have experience that is tested and vetted by other people who have been successful at putting communities together and correct, like reducing violence household by household. Like if you have that kind of leader and they want to just sit up there and spew out policies that are not based in facts and not based in evidence, not based in research about what works, you have a problematic leader. Leaders, it is okay to humble yourself and say, I need assistance in writing this ship. Because there are a lot of sheeple. There are a lot of sheeple out here. There are a lot of sheeple out here. So I'm going to be connecting more. I'm coming back at you. You could probably, did I leave my email? My email is kei'yah360@gmail.com. Right now, I come in my own right. I come as the beneficiary of my own trust and as one who wants to civilly interact with other women who want to stand up for what is right and maybe don't know how. You know, I want to share some of the things that have come my way. I want to learn from you who might be further along on the journey to managing their own estate and claiming theirs. All right. And freeing our brothers um, from unlawful imprisonment. You know, there's something called corpus delicti, right? So that means like if someone is detained for something, when I say detained, I mean like in jail, in prison. It according to the law, it's going to need to be for something because they intentionally tried to harm someone. Like like for instance, if you know someone who's detained for having too much MARI on them, that's not lawfully punishable offense. And if someone knew how to stand up for their rights, they would do that. So we need to be more competent in knowing how to help each other stand up for our rights because it's done as a people, as a community. And then when we see regular abusive patterns that continue to oppress us over and over, we have to come together on the things that we agree on first. Former President Barack, he was a community organizer first. What community organizers do is they connect, they engage with people in various, I would say, silos or circles or communities. They hear what it is that is important to those people. So let's give an example. A particular county, they might go to the high income yellow crayons and find out, yellow crayons, what do you need to be comfortable in your box? And the yellow crayons, they'll say, we need clean water, we need whatever, as a body, this is what they need. Go to the higher income. Did I say higher income first? I don't know. But you go to the higher income yellow crayons. You go to the lower income yellow crayons and you learn what they need. You don't argue with them. You don't tell them you don't need that. You don't tell them you don't know what you're talking about. You don't tell them things like you don't have a culture. You don't tell them what to call themselves. You can ask them, how do you prefer to be called? Yeah, because however it is legally on paper is a separate, different matrix and jurisdiction than what it is when you're communicating with someone in person, face to face, in the flesh. They tell you what they want to be called. You don't tell them. In law, what you're called is a such and such. Man, that is a legal fiction anyway. So whatever they're called on a piece of paper is a legal fiction. That's not who they are. And if you want to connect and be engaging and responsible, you're not going to tell people what they are on a piece of paper because they're not a piece of paper. They're not their name. They're not their label. They're people, living, breathing spirit. Let's get with that. Okay, so community organizer, is this also going to go? They're going to go to the brown crayons. And, I'm also using like an inanimate object in part because the many times there'll be leaders who are speaking in the stead of whoever. There'll be leaders who are speaking in the stead of the crayons. So now the leader is in a person, a representation capacity. And it's okay. But many times leaders of communities cannot speak individually. They might hear someone at a public meeting or something like that, but that's not the same thing as being a part of the culture and fully knowing the challenges. So it's okay if a leader of a community talks to another leader of a community. It's okay if we listen. We have two ears and one mouth for a purpose, because we need to be listening twice as much as what we're talking. We must listen twice as much. Who are you outside of the culture to come tell someone inside of a particular subculture what they need? They can come on the outside and say, hey, I wonder if you need XYZ, and then ask and then talk about the ramifications one way or another. But you want to know that most people, even if they're not the expert on the solution, they're definitely the expert on whatever their problem is. They're the expert on the expert on the problem, and maybe or maybe not expert on communicating their problem. See, sometimes that happens where leaders might even be the expert of a particular problem, but not expert on how to communicate it. But that doesn't mean that you disregard the substance of whatever it is that needs to be communicated. You don't disregard the substance just because someone didn't say it the way you need it to be said. All right. We want to let go of that judgment and narcissism. We want to let go of that ego drive that makes you think that you need to hear something a certain way before you accept it. This is Aquarius. This is the age of the feminine. And the divine feminine is also perfecting the masculine feminine. It is not feminine to actually listen. You're not demasculizing yourself when you sit and listen and recognize that as much as you know, as much as you spend time learning and reaching for knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to know more than everybody in your presence. And particularly if you haven't studied or learned or been in an environment where you're being sharpened like iron by other people who are also researchers and studying. There's a certain logic that goes behind some of these people with the all these like PhD letters behind their name. Yeah, there's a process. There's a process, and people get tried in the process to make sure that they understand how to logically think through a situation. Sometimes in these processes, are they deprived of core information? Yeah. hmm But that doesn't mean that they don't have a good process of deducting and being, logically thinking through some things. But of course, the foundation of sound knowledge is truth, and many of them don't have the truth because how can the system stand? But some of them do have the truth. Okay. But you're not going to know until you humble yourself and observe and watch. You know a tree by its fruit. How do you know an apple tree is an apple? Because it bears apples. How do you know an orange tree is an orange? Because it bears oranges. How about a mango tree? How do you know a mango tree is just that? It bears delicious mangoes. Now, we must slow down and use all of our senses to gain knowledge about the type of fruit that is being produced from a particular leader. So, my grandmother used to say, the road to hell was paved with good intention. So, someone comes, kind, smile, all that good stuff. And they're well intended, but that doesn't mean that they're taking you to somewhere where you need to go or want to go. So what I want to do is I want to end this before it comes to a full hour because I don't want to lose anything on these posts here. I want to send love. I want to send encouragement to those who want to be leaders, who send encouragement to those who don't want to be leaders, but just for some reason the universe has picked you to lead. Keep thinking. Buy books on leadership. Put yourself around other leaders, not other proclaimers, other leaders who are leading people in righteousness, right? They're debt free, they're tax free. They show other people how to get debt free and tax free without charging them a bunch of money. They're able to share their ups and downs, all right, without being pretentious and walking around, as if they make a mistake, they're like not valuable. We don't want to follow people like that. All right. So I lost my Instagram. Shout out to Therese. Tyrese, keep your head up, God. I left him a message. I'm not sure if he got it. Anyway, the message is let's learn how to manage our estate. Let's learn about reading the Constitution in whatever state your assets are. Where are your assets, man? Do you know the state constitution for your assets? Do you know how to operate as a constitutional, your entities, your trade name? Do you know how to operate that in the constitution for whatever state that you're at, right? And then can you go read like to Jerry Bay? Go read that Constitution and look at that Constitution and compare it to the U.S. Constitution and find out which one of the constitutions is going to protect your right, your God-given right, which doesn't change no matter where you are. It's part of your Constitution. That's so rude for me to yawn. I'm sleepy. Peace and love and righteousness.